Welcome. It is the penultimate edition of Notes and Accords, and I'm going to be talking about woods of all different types in perfume. As always, we're going to start off the first hour discussing the plentitude of materials that are at the perfumer's disposal when keeping woods in mind in composition. And woods is a very broad category, as many of you know. So we're going to cover as much of it as possible in a digestible time span. So the first hour, I'm going to be talking about the raw materials, natural and synthetic. And then in the second hour of the live stream, I will be going over some selections, a sampling of selections in my collection of perfumes that prominently feature woods. And we'll get things started here. And I'd like to hear from more people in the chat. I'm already happy to hear from Ricardo. Good to see you as well. Welcome. We have 8 people who are currently tuned in. If you would like to do a check-in and say hello. I'm also, as usual, going to make this as interactive of an experience as possible and ask you questions, those of you who are tuned in. Now, one of my first questions is how many woody notes can you think of that is often featured in perfume? Let me know how many you can list. Margie, great to see you. Oh, goodness. Oh, no, the timing. Well, people can flip-flop. Good to see you, though. Woods. What is the most common woody note that you find in a fragrance? Could a woodchuck... Yeah. Could a woodchuck chuck when it would, if a woodchuck could chuck wood, right? And we have that charming man here: cedar, spruce, oak, birch. Good choices. Now, this is the interesting thing about woody scents, because you can think in terms of the actual wood itself or the foliage of a tree. So, for example, spruce, I think more in terms of the needles, but it isn't out of the question that an idea or a concept of the wood itself would be apparent. Sandalwood. Yeah, of course, sandalwood. What else? What else can we name? There's a big one, and it's a big one that is sort of a crux, a blender. It's a staple in perfume. Hi, Paroli. Scent of the night is Dior Musc Elixir Précieux. There's one really obvious one right in front of you, and it is perhaps the most common wood. Pat Lester, hey, how are you? 10 people tuned in at the moment. Don't forget to hit the like. If one of you can give me a like count, let me know how many likes there are currently. We have that charming man mentioning Akigala, and Akigala wood is actually it is a synthetic and a proprietary one. It is, well, I don't know if we would call it proprietary, but it's a captive. But it is an actual wood that exists. It would be interesting if I were to, right off the cuff, figure out what Akigala means. And when I type in Akigala, interestingly enough, a whole bunch of different perfumes that mention Akigala come up. But what is the meaning of Akigala? It seems to be hard to find, because every time I type in Akigala, it mentions perfumes with Akigala wood in it. But I don't think it is a wood that exists in nature. Oud is another one, but it isn't. Oud isn't one that I consider to be that baseline staple in perfume. But Robin, hi, good to see you, mentions it amongst his list: cypress, pine, fir, and cedar. Cedar is perhaps found in perfume more often than any other type of wood. And that's because of its versatility. It's a great baseline. It's a great way of pulling together other elements. And it is generally relatively affordable compared to other types of wood, but it is no less pleasant to the nose. Tiger Woods, very clever. 12 people tuned in. So we have cedar, we have sandalwood, we have mentioned oud. I won't be talking too much about oud because those of you who are very familiar with me know that I don't mind oud, but it doesn't make me kick my heels into the air. It's not one of those that I have developed an obsession for. Though I do have an agarwood solvent extracted absolute. I have some oudatars. I even have some small quantities of oud synthetics. I'm really going to be focusing on other types of wood because oud is almost larger. It's almost like an entity unto itself, anyways. So, sandalwood, cedarwood. Somebody mentioned spruce. Robin mentioned cypress, pine. We can do a pine needle accord, or we could do a pine wood accord. Can anybody think of some others? Great to have you here, and greetings from the United States. Great to hear that we have a German follower here. Lovely to have you joining us. Akigala means Quentin Bish. There you go. I think that pretty much sums it up. Great, Ben Hyde, that's a great answer. Oak. There's oak that can appear in perfume, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that as well. Rosewood, very nice. Another great choice, Regis. Mr. Regis Monkton. Can anybody think of, now if I do a scent description for this one, let's see if somebody can guess it. This one's a little bit oily and unctuous and a bit smoky, and it has this mysterious rosy undercurrent to it. Can anybody think of what I'm describing? We're not talking about rosewood, so I'm talking about something nobody has mentioned before. A bit oily, smoky, thick, rich, with this almost this rosy, slightly sweet undertone to it. 15 people who are tuned in at the moment. Ricardo has actually given the answer with guaiac. Guaiac wood is what I was looking for. There's ebony. We don't actually have any extraction of wood from the ebony tree, but there are accords that are created to evoke the scent of ebony wood. Very nice. Well, why don't we get things started now? I'll begin by chatting about the naturals that can be used by a perfumer. So why don't we get started with that? So I have a set of them here. And this is in no particular order. I'm just going to take out some of them. So somebody mentioned oak wood absolute. Howood, yes, similar to rosewood, high linalool content. So oak wood is wonderful, wonderful stuff. And the thing that is quite striking about oak wood is the fact that we can get an association with whiskey. And that makes sense because of the aging of whiskey in oak barrels. There's a vanillic quality, there's a smoky quality, there's a rich, dense, eminently woody quality to it as well. And Oakwood Absolute is available to the perfumer's palates. Wonderful stuff. Here's a very interesting one here. Has anybody heard of Buddha wood? So Buddha wood, so I'll show you here. So Buddha wood shares some similarities with sandalwood. And the thing about Buddha wood is that it has sort of like this meaty, earthy, leathery kind of quality to it. It's been also referred to colloquially as false or bastard sandalwood, as a matter of fact, or also Australian desert rosewood, although it doesn't really quite have too many similarities to that of rosewood or sandalwood, maybe vaguely. And I find that it shows up mostly in niche perfumes. It isn't really used as much in commercial perfumery. I actually have another extraction here. It's a CO2, so that's a carbon dioxide extraction. It's a little bit different from a solvent extracted absolute. So that's Buddha wood. I have a black spruce absolute. Somebody had mentioned spruce earlier. So this is extracted from the wood and the needles. We have white cedar wood. This is Thuja occidentalis. So this is actually part of the Thuja family. And this has that thujonic quality to it, much like Thuja needles, wormwood, certain herbs. Absolutely gorgeous. It smells like you're in an enchanted coniferous forest. Gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. I purchased this from the now defunct White Lotus Aromatics. They had some just stunning naturals available. Some that were pretty rare to find, rare to locate. Atlas cedar. So this is going to be interesting because this is going to be a sort of a discussion on the botany of trees. So there's Virginia cedarwood and there is Texas cedarwood. And both of those are actually in the genus Juniperus. So they're actually technically botanically junipers, but they're referred to as cedarwoods. This, however, Atlas cedar, Cedrus atlantica, so you hear Cedrus, the genus Cedrus, is a true cedar. And it actually, in fact, smells very different from, say, Virginia wood or Virginia cedar wood or Texas cedar wood. Very different, very terpenic. There's a quality to it that is almost a little bit hard to wrap one's nose around, if you will, because there's this slight turpentine back note. But I find it to be really intriguing and fascinating stuff. There's a leathery quality to it, sort of floral, a bit ambery, even fruity. Atlas cedar is some interesting stuff. So not only do I have this absolute, a solvent extracted absolute, but I have this cedar atlas heart from Robertet. Now, there are heart fractionations that are used by perfumers. Now, Robertet produces a lot of them. And a fractionating of an oil, what it does is it distills, and it distills all the elements into fractions, removing some things that might be considered undesirable qualities or impure qualities, or maybe qualities that one would want to omit from the overall chemical composition of an essential oil or a plant extraction. So they're fractionated, and this is cedar atlas heart. So maybe some of these notes that are a little bit more coarse or rough, They're fractionated. The best qualities are taken at the heart of the cedar wood, is the result of this fractionation. Pine absolute, and pine absolute is extracted from not only the wood but also the needles as well. It's this gorgeous green material. John Beeble had a discussion with me about a month ago, and he has used it for his newest release, a limited edition release. The name is escaping me, but it's named after a bird. Oh, God. We talked about it, though. I was just reading about it earlier. Look out for it, though. God, why is the name escaping me? Long day. A long day. It is in the woodpecker family. Oh, it came to me. Northern flicker. And he uses a lot of pine wood absolute in that. Fir balsam absolute. This is from Abies balsamea. And this is from the needles. And this reminds me of Christmas because balsam fir is often used as a Christmas tree. Balsam fir incense is popular here in New England. If we have anybody who's tuned in from New England, the incense is popular. There's actually Payne incense based out of Maine that creates incense cones and sticks and little pillows filled with balsam fir needles. And it's just a beautiful, piney, fruity, coniferous, aromatic scent. So that's fir balsam absolute. Hi there, Duncan. Descendre. That is a good selection for this discussion. Regis mentions clearwood. Clearwood is another one of those fractionations. And this time it's a fractionation of patchouli. Now, I want to mention that even though I'm not going to be talking in great length about patchouli, it is certainly germane to this discussion because patchouli is most often considered a woody scent, even though it's not coming from a plant that is woody. It's not a tree, but there's a woodiness to it. So clear wood is named because it is a fractionation of patchouli that exalts all of the woody elements of it. Which cedar is used in Guerlain Bois Mystérieux? I don't know that for certain because I don't have the exact breakdown. I don't have the GCMS of it, but I would imagine there is probably a lot of Virginia cedarwood or Texas cedarwood or some cedar fractionations, terpenes of cedarwood. I don't think it's Atlas cedarwood though, but I could be wrong. There could have been some Atlas cedarwood used as well. Chinese cedar has a very curious smell, almost barbecuey. I know that I have some Heba wood here. Flicker, yes, thanks, Tom. Northern flicker. I was struggling there for a moment. Thank you for helping out. Cade-like, very, very interesting. So you're referring to the Chinese cedar. Scent of the day from Momentarily Lost, Olympic Forest, Olympic Rainforest, very cedar forward. Joseph Abood Vintage is my favorite cedar frag. That was released in the early 90s, as far as I remember. Palo Santo, that's another one. A very interesting citrusy, bracing, sharp, minty, very peculiar quality to it. I have a love-hate, I have sort of a love-hate relationship with it, but it still intrigues me. Here's the Texas cedarwood. So people might want to know what the difference is between Texas cedarwood and Virginia cedarwood. And the main difference, and I will take up there's some Virginia cedarwood here. So Virginia cedarwood is a bit drier in quality. And Texas cedarwood is a bit more oily and saturated. Now, what is interesting about this, they're very closely related because this is Juniperus virginiana. That is cedarwood from the Virginia cedarwood. And then the Texas cedarwood, Juniperus. My goodness. I cannot read this with my 46-year-old eyes. It's a very small Mezzacuna. Juniperus mezzacuna. Two different species of cedarwood, similar, but the Virginia cedarwood is a drier quality, and the Texas cedarwood is oilier. So the perfumer may keep in mind what kind of effect they want to impart in their composition and choose whichever they see as fit to evoke what they want to evoke. There's so many obscure ones. Jade cypress wood, which I know to be pretty smoky. I have a bio absolute, pine aged bio absolute from Atelier Pas France. Alligator juniper wood, really obscure stuff, not really found in perfumery. Limited production, but really fascinating, very earthy smelling. And Amyris. Amyris is an interesting one because Amyris is often used to extend or even cut sandalwood. It's sort of a way of replacing sandalwood, which is prohibitively expensive for some. And it is soft and woody and warm, a bit musty. It's balsamic, and it has great fixative value. And it's traditionally used as a sandalwood substitute. It's interesting how Francois Kirchen showcased Amyris, although it isn't really discernible in either one of those perfumes, because Amyris isn't really, a showstopper, nor is it a very exotic material. It's relatively inexpensive, but it's a great fixative. It's useful. It has utility for the perfumer. We have some juniper wood absolute. Lovely stuff. Not too dissimilar to that of the Virginia cedarwood, but it has a little bit more of that juniper scent to it. The same kind of scent that you would get from the needles, the berries. Some great bases as well. These are both from Robertet. Bois de l'Ain Essence. This is a natural base. This is one of my favorite bases. Remember, bases, they're subject to discontinuation. They may not be the most reliable thing to use, but they're still great to have for reference and to dabble with if you're blending. But this stuff smells so good. It's actually a co-extraction of French pine resinoid with Virginia cedarwood oil. So you have the pine and the cedar together. And it has some fir balsam undertones. It's a little fruity, blackcurrant-like in the top notes. Very strong pine trees, headspace. Oh, it's just breathtaking. It's such nice stuff. Another one that is produced by Robertet is Bois d'Encens, otherwise known as incense wood, literally the translation. And this is a co-extraction of molybdenum resinoid, so that's the frankincense resinoid, with a Virginia cedarwood oil. And the cedarwood oil, it generates some molecular reactions in order to modify the composition of the final product, according to Robertet. It's fresh and powerful, fruity, very molybdenum strong in the top, warm, balsamic, woody, somewhat animalic, dry down. Just beautiful stuff. Perfumes within themselves, both Bois de l'Ain and Bois d'Encens. And remember, there are not all materials that are inherently woody actually come from wood, just like I was mentioning. Patchouli doesn't come from the wood of a tree. There's also Papyrus absolute and also Cypriol. So these are beautiful things. Cypriol is actually heavily featured in Jovois Paris' private label. There is a large percentage of Cypriol in that. So I do think that I have some Cypriol. There's a great Cypriol heart that I have. Let's see if I can locate it. Beautiful stuff, though. Really sharp and astringent. It really pairs well with vetiver. And it has this sort of damp, sort of marshy kind of quality to it as well. In my notes, I describe it as the sort of a deep, smoky, leathery kind of smell. It's very distinctive, rooty and smoky and dry and camphoraceous. And it comes from the same plant that the papyrus comes from, the same species where papyrus paper was used ages ago. Coco Rico is nice. Texas cedar has a southern drawl. Ricardo Neves, Amyris is often used to unify composition and to round up the edges. Good for pointing that out. 17 people tuned in. Don't forget to hit the like. If anybody can report how many likes we have, I am hoping that we're up to hopefully 20 likes. There's sandalwood of all different kinds too. Different species of sandalwood grown in different locations. Right now I'm smelling a specific type of sandalwood, Santalum paniculatum, which grows in Hawaii. There's also another one that's very nutty. I like that. There's also a type that is native to New Caledonia in the Pacific. We do know of the Australian sandalwood, and we know of Santalum album, native to India. I have some Santalum album here. And my nose can discern the difference. I do appreciate Australian sandalwood. I think it's great that it exists as a more sustainable form of sandalwood, but I can discern the differences for sure between Santalum spicatum, which is Australian sandalwood, and Santalum album, the Mysore sandalwood, as they call it. I have a lot of vetiver in here as well. Vetiver is woods adjacent. It has a very woody, grassy feel to it. Oak moss is adjacent. So you think of things like patchouli, vetiver, oak moss, they all contribute to woody accords without actually coming from woods themselves. So that's the naturals. I have a few more over here. Bring those up. Here's a big helping of something called Siam wood essential oil. And this gets very little use in commercial perfumery, but in niche perfumery and artisan perfumery, it is starting to see more use in it. And this is very cool stuff. It's very, very nice. It has this very open scent to it, which is unusual for a wood, sort of this ethereal feel. It is, the Latin name is Phokinia hodgkinsii. I think I pronounced that correctly. Hodgkinsii. I think maybe if we're looking at two I's in Latin. And Siam wood, like I said, it's not widely produced, but it is available to the perfumer, especially an artisan perfumer. It's also called Pemu, and it's a soft, creamy, warm, sweetly balsamic, slightly nutty, with a precious woods bouquet. Very interesting sort of cedarwood facets underneath, but it isn't really too similar to cedarwood. Very cool stuff. It would be interesting to see it used in perfume more often. Here's some more Myris here. Um, and that's pretty much, I pretty much have exhausted all of the naturals that I chose to talk about. We're at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let me tell you something. Those are the naturals. Oh, there is one that I wanted to mention, which is kind of a fun one. And it is called Muhuhu. I love the name for it, Muhuhu, or African sandalwood. The Latin name is Brachylena hutchinsii. And Muhuhu doesn't really appear too often in perfume, but it is available to the perfumer for their palette. And it's woody and balsamic and smoky, vetiver like, almost teak wood like. It has that quality to it. Very smooth stuff. Beautiful. Muhuhu. Muhuhu. So I think what I want to do first is talk about maybe all of the different cedarwood materials, and then we'll move on to the sandalwood materials, and then all the miscellany after that. We'll get back to the chat here. I just want to remind folks that if you enjoy this content, if you find it useful, informative, if you keep coming back for more, I would appreciate the support here. Buy me a coffee. Each coffee is $5. 6 cups means I will send you a sample pack from the gargantuan volume of samples that I have. And then 12 cups, I will send you a grab bag, a mystery grab bag of 4 bottles of fragrances that are in my collection, a surplus, plus a sample pack. So 12 cups will get you back. It's going to be US only, please, at this time. And the link is right in the pinned comment, just right up above. 12 people tuned in. Don't be shy. Let's hear more people in the chat. It would be lovely. All right, let's see. So one of them, so we're going to go over some of the cedar forward materials. And this first one is quite interesting. It's called cedroxide. So cedroxide, it's woody, it's dry, it's ambery. There's some patchouli elements to it. It's quite tenacious. This is an example of one of those things that's going to keep the cedar really fixed and really present in a composition. So even used in maybe some smaller quantities would really make the difference in enabling the cedar to sit within the composition for long periods of time. So that's cedroxide. Now, this brings me to one of the most well-known synthetics in perfume. So if somebody who is tuned in can tell me what this particular material I'm about to discuss is, if you could give me the name, because a lot of people talk about it. Let's see if somebody can guess it in the chat. So we'll hopefully get the chat going. We'll have a little bit more activity in there. Regis, this is very close, but that's a little bit more general. It is in that category, though. The specific one that I'm about to chat about. And it is quite useful in lending a woody, cedary effect with high diffusion and high fixative quality. Marvelous. Momentarily Lost has the answer with ISO E, specifically ISO E Super. I have some ISO E Super here. And it has become a staple in perfumery, almost to the chagrin of certain perfume enthusiasts, where it really stands out to their nose. Or in some cases, it might give them parosmia or anosmia, meaning they get nose deficient, or nose blind because of it. And it is in tons of stuff. Terre d'Hermes and several from Comme des Garçons, many different mainstream fragrances, many not so mainstream fragrances as well because of its versatility, its ability to lift the top notes, its ability to heighten the accords, its great synergy with hedione, in a composition, and its great fixative value as well. And there's also isomers of it. We have timber silk here, very similar to it. So timber silk, very reminiscent to the dry down of Virginia cedarwood, ambery, musky, powdery aspects of sandalwood. It's very clean cut, smooth. It has a lot of power and a lot of energy. So in my notes, I jotted down that somebody said this material has more power and energy than Michael Flatley Riverdance stage show. And I thought that was humorous and accurate. It's a wonderful material, though, if used in a judicious manner. It really supercharges compositions, increasing the intensity of the natural wood that may be in those compositions. So say if you have natural cedar wood, heba wood, hinoki wood, sandalwood, it supercharges them. It's sort of like the MSG for those flavors, if you know what I mean. 18 people tuned in. I appreciate that each and every one of you are tuned in to this Notes and Accord live stream for woods. Let's get into some more here. I think we should talk about some of the ones that I have here. And we have reviews. Oh, hello there. That looks suspiciously like Sweet Milk. I do think that might be he. The Last Shill, Chapter 3, Part 1, Thanksgiving. The Last Shill, Chapter 3, Part 2 on Black Fridays. Part 2 is my pièce de résistance. Finally, we get to hear my side of the story. Hey, I have no problem with you promoting that because I think you always have some clever jabs at what's going on in the perfume community. So by all means, please let us know of your developments and we'll tune into them. Thank you so much. Claire Zimberlin, JJ, it's a half hour after midnight here in the UK. Nice to catch you live. Nice to have you here. Don't stay up too late if you're going to sacrifice some sleep, but you can always listen to the playback, but you could fall asleep to this if you want to too. Hey, wouldn't be the first time somebody's fallen asleep to my yammering about. So there's a lot of interesting bases. Like I said, bases, reliability and dependency on bases is arguable depending upon whether you're a large scale or a small scale perfumer. Nick S. Evening, JJ Colborne and all. Scent of the day was Chanel Pour Monsieur. EDT. Scent of the evening is Richard James Savile Row. Very nice choices. Would love to see guaiac wood discussed tonight. Really curious about that one. We talked about guaiac wood a little bit. There's going to be a synthetic isolate that we'll be talking about in a short bit. So good to see you, Nick S. So this base is Fixo Bois. It's made by Firmenich. So this is another base. And let me just bring up my notes on Fixo Bois. Okay. Just bear with me. I am famously disorganized here. I don't know if I actually jotted down the Fixo Bois base, but it's one of those bases that is actually, a captive blend of it's a blend of captives, a blend of naturals, and it's intended for the perfumer to use to impart a woody quality to the base without necessarily having to go through all the trouble of constructing it on their own. So I think that's a good summary of it. Same thing with wood base. From Firmenich. which I thought I jotted down some of these notes. Or oh yeah, I have here. Okay, so I do actually have some info on Fix-a-Bois, according to my notes here. It is a distinctive and powerful woody note that is dry, warm, and full-bodied. I get a dry wood, sandalwood spice and sweetness with a bit of an earthy undertone, maybe even a decayed wood underneath. Very cool stuff. Perhaps also a little musk-like, but more along the lines of cashmere in that regard. It is fairly subtle, but seems to last a very long time. And then there's the other Firmenich wood base, just called wood base, with a fresh and fizzy undertone. This wood base surprises with modern and elegant ribbon of radiant warmth, bright, powerful, diffusive, and slightly animalic. This base is rich in Firmenich captive ingredients, which impart a fine, unctuous character to all compositions. Yeah, that's some pretty cool stuff. But like I said, I'm on the fence about relying on bases because they could just decide to discontinue production of them. They're great to own though. So there's patchouli acetate, which can often be naturally extracted from patchouli, or I don't know if it can actually be synthetically extracted. It's very hard with the patchouli constituents to do those synthetically. So I think that the patchouli oil is always a feedstock for them, but it is the woodiest aspect of patchouli to me. It smells very much like the fresh cut wood aspect or facet that you get from patchouli. Lovely, lovely stuff. And there's more. There's more cedral acetate. We're going back to cedar. So cedral acetate is tenacious and woody, smoky, leathery, some vetiver qualities to it. So a perfumer could choose to use cedral acetate instead of throwing in some cedar, or they'll have cedar, but then they'll enhance it with cedral acetate. Here's another base. Got a lot of these bases. I was just collecting everything that I could back in the day. Extremely powerful woody base, ambery note, slightly animalic undertone, develops into a dry note reminiscent of patchouli. I also have another one here called blackwood, which is a rich agarwood type of aroma. There's also vetiveryl acetate. So there you go again with extractions from vetiver. Coniferan. So coniferan is another one that is used when constructing woody accords. IFF produces this. Balsamic, sandalwoody, there's a sweetness, there's a sweet qualities of the wood here. Kind of like the same that you would experience in fir balsam absolute. Almost like this raspberry jam undertone. Herbal, almost like a little bit of pear brandy. Very cool stuff. And there's mahogany, which is also called poivrol. So mahogany wood is a very peppery, spicy kind of smell to it. So caryophyllene is in it, and other constituents that are usually in pepper. Lots of good stuff. Here's the one I was talking about. This is guaiac acetate or guaiac wood acetate. So this can be used in place of natural guaiac wood, which I was sharing, which I was talking about earlier. And guaiac wood is so cool. And any kind of derivative of it. Like I said, it has that smoky, oily, unctuous character to it with this like rosy, sort of mysterious, elusive, rosy quality underneath it. Let's see if I can bring up my notes for this one. Here we go. Yeah, It mentions balsamic, tea rose, woody, fatty. There is a fattiness to guaiac wood for sure. Okay, we're at 750. So I think the next thing that I'm going to do here, after I share a couple more of these, is go over all the different sandalwood materials. I can't believe how many synthetics and bases are used for sandalwood, yet they are out there and it is formidable. Here is a little sample of something that is called cedrone. This is clean and woody and dry, cedary, earthy. It's epoxidized sandalwood oil. So an epoxide in organic chemistry, um, according to my notes, it's in organic chemistry, an epoxide is a cyclic ether, where the ether forms a 3-atom ring, 2 atoms of carbon and 1 atom of oxygen. Some of them are dangerous. This is obviously not a dangerous one because it's used in perfumery. And it is that this epoxidation of the oil, it draws out these qualities that may be a little bit buried in the oil itself. So, very cool stuff. Orisaris, hi there. Thank you for joining us. Hello. No, that's okay. If you want to watch the playback for the first part, you could do that. And you talk about blue spruce. We had one as a Christmas tree one year. House smelled great for months. See, there's not many materials that are extracted from the wood of spruce, but the needles of spruce for a coniferous feel, for that the smell of the needles, that's much more common. I think that, yeah, you could consider sandalwood to be sort of a softener, a blender, a way of anchoring everything else, fleshing it out. Um, there's another term for it, making things a little bit more sheer in the dry down. And it seems like you have a preference for cedar. And you mentioned you had just seen that you can get 5 pounds blue spruce candle oil for $107. It's probably the same crap used in fragrances. Fragrance oils should not be used in fragrance. They're formulated specifically for candles and crafts. So it's likely not the same stuff that is actually used in fragrances. Nika says, original Samsara parfum made me fall in love with sandalwood. Now I love it as much as cedar, if not more. Now, are we referring to guaiac wood, Nick? Referring to it as creamy? Yeah, creamy, smoky. Yeah, yeah. There's a creaminess that kind of goes hand in hand with that fattiness of it. All right, now I'm going to pull out all of those sandalwood materials because there are a lot. There are a lot of them because sandalwood is just, it's expensive for perfumers to use sandalwood, honestly. You know, if they want to have like a big sandalwood, I mean, most of the perfumes that you smell may have a small percentage of natural sandalwood in them, or just may in fact have none at all. Because cost cutting is a big part of it all. Now, is that to say that the quality is diminished? Not necessarily. There seems to be this belief that the fewer naturals in a perfume, the more inferior the quality, and that is not true at all. I would caution not to be so reductive in that belief, and many enthusiasts out there tend to be, and tend to have a very misguided belief that the naturals are what make perfume um, superior in quality and more respectable. And truthfully, there have always been a smaller ratio of naturals to synthetics for decades and decades. Um, that is not to say that the naturals do. I mean, obviously, I believe this for sure, and most perfumers and people in the perfume industry do recognize the value and the importance of a holistic, complete perfume, having at least a small percentage of naturals to flesh out the composition. I always appreciated the quote from Jean-Claude Ellena that the synthetics are the bones, sort of the scaffolding, and the naturals are the flesh. So it depends on how much you want to flesh out a composition, or if you want it to be more bare and minimal. Now, take for example Jean-Claude Ellena, who most definitely uses naturals, but his idiom is that of economy. So he uses a limited palette to achieve what he does, challenging himself to create the effects that he wants to achieve with this limited palette. So he does not use a lot of naturals in his work, but what he can do with the limited palette that he has is outstanding, because he has that genius for understanding how this limited palette and the materials within it work with each other in creating these complete compositions and ideas. So that is testament to the fact that you need not have 40-50% naturals for a perfume to smell natural and to smell magnificent. All right. That was a bit of a tangent, but I just felt it was necessary to say that because there seems to be a lot of discourse and misinformed discourse. And also people who seem to think that 30 or more years ago, there were a lot more naturals being used, and that's hogwash, because that hasn't changed all that much, honestly, even in commercial perfumery and mainstream designer perfumery. Maybe a tiny bit less. Maybe the quality of the materials have been diminished, but not so much that it is dramatic from 30 or 40 years ago. Try maybe even further back from that. Much further back from that. Not the 80s, not the 70s and 80s stuff that people blow their wad over, because it wasn't too much different then, honestly. All right, here are all the sandalwood materials. And there's plenty of them to talk about. Here is the Australian sandalwood that I have, which people seem to think smells like pickles. But as a matter of fact, Santal 33, the pickly effect is a combination of the sandalwood with some other materials in the composition, including, I think, some elemi resin. When you actually smell Australian sandalwood, it is a bit buttery, a little bit less complex than from Santal album, but you would recognize it as a sandalwood, just not the premium sandalwood that Santalum album is often associated. But we're going to get to some of the synthetics here. This one is produced by Simrise. This is Brahmanol. Let me bring my notes up here. Because contrary to popular belief, I'm not brilliant enough to just say all of these things on the fly. My brain only has so much bandwidth, so I have to take a look at my notes every now and then. I do think I have some Brahmanol notes here. Yeah, so this one, just very simply, it's very useful for sandalwood reconstitutions. That's the key word, reconstitution. That's what's going on most of the time here, folks, is reconstitution, because it is more affordable to do a reconstitution of sandalwood than using a large percentage of it. So Brahmanol is one of those that contributes to that. Dartanol. So Dartanol is another one. It has a sandalwood, slightly cedarwood, creamy quality. It gives a creamy and cosmetic connotation. It's excellent in combination with other sandalwood aromas, and it gives body to the sandalwood. So you're putting together a sandalwood reconstitution, a recreation of that sandalwood, and you want to add that body to it. And what do you mean by body? It means, just as the word suggests, it has that weight to it. It feels substantial, feels like it's not floating. It has like a substantivity to it. So that's Dartanol. And Polysantal, that's another one here. Telling you, there's a ton of these, because that sandalwood is just always reconstructed and reconstituted. Polysantal, this is very substantive material, very strong, diffusive, Has a strong sandalwood character to it, and it really lasts a long time. Great strength in the notes. Mysore acetate. So this is actually an isolate here. Fresh, woody, sandalwood, floral, violet, fruity, ambery. A woody freshness that's applicable to many fragrance types. So you have these isolates as well. Santalol is another isolate. Santalol appears naturally in sandalwood. This is actually a natural isolate. There's also synthetic isolates of santalol. It's clean, it's creamy, it's considered masculine, rich-bodied, and it's often used on its own without necessarily with the intention of having a sandalwood note. Ebanol. Ebanol is an interesting one as well. Ebanol is very rich, natural sandalwood odor. Very powerful and intense. Can't really do some strong whiffs of it. It's very musky as well. Very cool stuff. There's also something, let's see here. It's a good segue into Sandalore, which is another sandalwood woody type odor, very diffusive. And in my notes, together with that ebanol, it serves as an effective sandalwood replacement. So you take some ebanol, you take some Sandalore, and the average person would not be able to tell the difference between that and a decent quality sandalwood. So it just keeps on going and going. I mean, I have another one here, Sandella, clean, sweet, woody, high strength. There's some super strong ones as well, like Javanol. Has anybody ever heard of Javanol? The gentleman who, God, that is, I can't remember, but he, Italian gentleman, Alessandro Gualtieri. Do I have the name correct? He overdoses the hell out of this composition of his with Javanol, and it is just really headache inducing because it is just already an extremely strong sandalwood material. In my notes, it says unprecedented power and substantivity. It is really strong, and he overdosed it, and it won't clean out of clothes. It stays on your skin after several showers. Not particularly fond of those kinds of perfumes when people overdose high impact, strong, substantive materials like that. We also have isomohanol. This is another one that is intense. There's a lot of intense ones, woody, spicy. These are the ways of making some sandalwood more intense than the natural sandalwood itself to just elevate it. So many. You can go on and on and on and on. But I think you get the gist here. There are a lot of them that are used here. We have First Santal. That's another one. It's just, a similar description, similar usage. So yeah, that's pretty much, it gives you an idea of how many sandalwood materials are used in creating sandalwood accords. Just like we've gone over how many materials are used for cedarwood accords. And the truth of the matter is woods are a big part of perfume. So it comes as no surprise that you're going to have so many different types of materials that are woody, natural and otherwise. So that ends the first hour of Notes and Accords. I think what we're going to do for the second hour, well, I'm always doing this in the second hour of Notes and Accords. We're going to be talking about the selection of woody perfumes that I have here that I think it really do represent very well woods in fragrance. So I'm going to step away for just a moment, and we will be right back. And welcome back. We're on to our second hour where I'm just going to talk about my woodiest perfumes in my collection, or just a smattering of them, I suppose. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. 17 people tuned in. Thank you, each and every one of you. Javanol is so strong already. I know. I think, I can't remember the name of it. It's just like hideous, though. Don't really like that line at all. Let me see if I can actually remind myself what I'm referring to here. So it's the same gent who does Nasomato. So it is, yeah, it is in fact it's Alessandro Gualtieri. Okay, but it isn't from Nasomato. It's the Orto Parisi, and I think it is actually maybe it is. Let's see. Give me a second. It might be Balcanera. No, not Bacanera. It might be Bergamask. It's one of the I don't know. It's one of them, and it's just hideous. Like 20% Javanol. Regis Moncton asks which type of sandalwood is commonly used to make sandalwood incense. It all depends on who's making the incense, my friend. People are going to claim that it's Mysore, even if it might not be. They could just be using some synthetics. Um, but it mostly Mysore, maybe Australian sandalwood, perhaps some of those other species. So I'm just doing a little catch up here. And Oris Ever says there is some sandalwood material that absolutely turns my stomach when it dries down. It's got a sweet quality to it and no creaminess. I'd be interested in knowing what that one is. Could be one of the myriad examples that I've shared. Nick S says I had a sneaky feeling it could be replicated well with aroma chems. Guess it all depends on the skill of the perfumer. But truth be told, guaiac wood isn't a rare material. But there are ways, of course, you're going to have some materials just like any other more accessible natural to make that effect more minimal or to push it in a very specific direction. So natural castoreum is a head turner, though I suppose it depends which material. The mention of spruce or pine needles makes me think of how much I would like to smell Serge Lutin's Fil Negui. What a beauty. Famous YouTuber Anuj gave me some vintage Xerius. It's nearly completely different from the modern. Not to knock the modern. Yeah, I have heard that it is quite dissimilar to the modern is to the vintage. I have only been familiar with the vintage. I think rosewood smells like pickles. Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, sort of. Pickles maybe without the dill. I don't know, or maybe with the dill, or maybe just the dill of the pickles. That'd be interesting to ponder. I think Javanol is one of those eccentric perfumes as a highlighted material. Yeah. Tom King, thank you so much for joining us. Hey, y'all. Glad to have just found this channel. Just a newcomer to the channel. Well, I wish you a hearty welcome. I do like your avatar there, the dog pondering the little flowers there. That's quite nice. Thanks for the announcement. I hope that it is pleasant. I hope that you do have, I don't know, a good movement. Why am I even entertaining that? Yeah, yeah, clear. I do too. The dill of the pickles. Yeah, yeah. All right. So, what should we start off with? Which wood? Let's have you guys decide. Which wood are we going to start off with? I'll give a couple choices because I don't want to say like guaiac wood because I'm going to have some trouble. I might be like, oh man, I don't have a perfume next to me that really features guaiac wood. So, what do you want to start off with first? Cedar or sandal wood? Let's get some votes. Woof woof. Cedar or sandal? We'll get a few, we'll get hopefully 4 votes, and then we get at least 5 votes because we can break a tie. Tom says, love cedar. Regis says cedar. Violet Aurora says sandalwood. 2 for cedar, 3 for sandalwood. Oh, yeah, wait. I said that all wrong, didn't I? 2 for cedar, 1 for sandalwood, and now 3 for cedar with Oris Eris. Absurd knows 4 for cedar. I think we're going to do cedar. I think that's a good enough amount of votes. And Nick S has sandalwood. So we'll do sandalwood after cedar. Okay, cedarwood it is. As you know, pretty much most of these fragrances that I'm going to be sharing, I do have more thorough reviews. And of course, when I sit down at my computer and stroke the keys, I can articulate my thoughts a lot better than rambling on here. So if you want to know really my more in-depth thoughts on these fragrances, just check out the reviews on Base Notes or Fragrantica. First one we have here, I did, this is a recent pickup. This is Spanish Cedar from Check and Speak. And this is a beautiful dried fruit and spiced cedar, very warm, very cozy. Just a really nostalgic, great for the season. Spanish Cedar. Check and Speak have some pretty remarkable fragrances in their earth. The price point is a little bit high for what they do, but they're just spectacular enough that I can almost forgive them for that. One of my favorite fragrances of all time is number 88 from Check and Speak. Spanish Cedar is quite lovely, though. So that's one of the newest cedars that are in my collection. And I noticed that it does have this warm fruitiness to it. It even has like a blackberry note, and it has like green with fruit, kind of like pulling and tugging. There's like a fruit cake kind of quality to it, like the scent of the, you know, the you know, that the holiday fruits like the citron and so on and so forth. Maybe you have a little bit of that plum pudding, and then it's a very woody dry down, a very, very warm, pleasant cedar in the dry down. Tom King says, I had a friend smell rosewood and she said it's dill pickles too. I had not noticed before. Silly dilly rosewood. Another one that prominently features cedar that I find quite pleasant is this one, where it is an example of cedar synergizing. It is converging with another floral, and in this case, it's jasmine. And this is a lovely one. Goodness. So this is Cedra Sambac. So this is after Jean-Claude Elena. So we are talking about who took over for her, for him. I just gave you a hint. It is of the female persuasion. Who can tell me who took over for Jean-Claude Elena as the house perfumer? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Nobody has the answer? Come on. I know you nerds know who. Who took over for Jean-Claude Elena at Hermes? Nagel, yes, Christine Nagel. Thank you so much, Absurd Nose. And she did a fantastic job. People claim that she's hit or miss. I think she's quite a competent perfumer. I don't know why people pick on her so much. I really don't get it. And the comparisons between her and Jean-Claude Elena, you know, she's her own perfumer, her own style, you know. Yes. Yep, the rhubarb éclair. Is that the name of it? Christine Nagel, thank you, Violet. And this is Cèdre Sambac. And it is a combination of cedar wood with jasmine sambac. My favorite kind of jasmine, really indolic and heady jasmine of jasmine sambac. So I think this is an excellent use of cedar in a fragrance. And one of échelâtre. Let me see. Let me get the rhubarb. Oh yeah, écalat. Eau de rhubarbe écalat. So this is one of the most famous cedar fragrances, and it's one of my favorites. Shiseido, Féminité du Bois. Oh, anybody a fan of this? Féminité du Bois? Cedar with that plum accord. So beautiful. I have not smelled the Serge Lutens version of this to make the comparison. I went right for one of these bottles, the Shiseido. It is so alluring. It's so sensual. There's that cinnamon, that there's that signature Serge Lutens spice melange that would just carry right in to the Serge Lutens line with Christopher Sheldrake. He worked with Pierre Bourdon on this one. Some violet ionones. It is a masterpiece. And I don't throw around masterpiece as a word very often nowadays. I used to use that one a little bit too loosely, but this is a masterpiece. And Claire says it's meant to smell of Atlas cedars that grow in Morocco. Yes, that's the thing about Féminité du Bois, is that in the composition, Atlas cedar is used, but also the juniperous variety of cedar is used in it as well. Nick says, too easy to be disappointed with Hermes' history of masterpieces. Is the Lutens and the Shiseido version the same? Good question. I've been told that there is the reformulations for the Serge, but I can't actually. I went with what was recommended to me, and I went right to a Shiseido version. And I actually haven't smelled the Serge version, to be honest with you, to make the comparison. If somebody wanted to send me the Serge version and I could do a comparison, I'd be delighted to do that. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that will be a great honorable mention. I by Brian. I almost pulled that one in as well, but I just felt like I was not going to be able to get to all of these in an hour. But that is a great honorable mention, Cedla, which, much like Cedla Sambac from Hermes, is the way that cedar works with a floral, and it's just spectacular the way that it just, the interplay between the cedar and the tuberose being just such a gregarious and powerful force in itself, and how the cedar sort of almost tames it and molds it and turns it into something a little bit more reflective than it usually is. It's a very good choice. Or Cyrus, I think I have some of the Surge version left. I can send you. Hey, let's arrange something. That'd be nice, and I'll do sort of a comparison and report back. More cedar, more cedar. Let's see. Oh yes, and the cedars are not always in higher price point fragrances. I don't know how easy it is to obtain this now. I'm not always in the loop as to whether or not things have been discontinued and so on and so forth. But this is a lovely one, Graphite from Claude Montana. This is a Nathalie Lawson, which Natalie is excellent at working in composing woody accords. And of course, we know she's a big fan of using Isoe Super um, to lift them. This one isn't quite the kind of Isoe Super as we would find in Encre Noire. We have a lot more of that naturalistic cedar going on here. And also some violet leaf that gives it a sort of shade as well. And this isn't merely a cedar fragrance. I have an announcement here. This is also a lot of guaiac wood as well. She used a lot of guaiac wood in this. And it's just beautifully rendered. And if I were to have somebody blind sniff this without their being aware that this is a more midpoint, mid-price sort of designer, if you will, somebody might think that this is a higher end niche kind of woody scent. It's just really fantastic. Graphite from Claude, Montana, with little leather. This little leather. It kind of drops. It just dropped its drawers there. It just slipped down. Uh, doesn't really stay. The newer bottles just have like a paper label, but this has sort of like a leather label, which is kind of cool. Sorry, the camera. That's my next level up is a new camera, so I can just zoom right in, and maybe I can maybe I can do a little bit of that. It's still not that great, but anybody familiar with that one? Dill shouldn't be used in perfumery. I don't know. I don't think you got to remember this about perfumery as well. There are things that are added into perfume compositions that are used in traces and are used as modifiers, and they're going to be used in very minute quantities to impart an effect. Now, if we were to keep that in mind, then it perhaps wouldn't be fair to say that dill shouldn't be used in perfumery. Maybe we could revise that by saying dill shouldn't be used at a large percentage in perfumery, which I think is just practical anyhow, because dill is a very strong essential oil and it could really overtake other things in the composition and it would smell very too pickle-like perhaps. But there's no reason not to think that if you used a small bit of dill in a certain idea or concept, it could do some interesting stuff within a composition. Nick S says, yeah, I adore Féminité du Bois, but it was a tad too rich for me. I think that Eau Tendre version would be perfect. Are there any tarragon perfumes? There's one perfume that is really forward with tarragon, and it does have anise, but the tarragon really stands out to me. And oh God, I'm just being put on the spot here, but it is. Let me just look it up here because my brain can't function with all of this information here. Let me see if I can locate it for you, and I'll give you the recommendation. I have it sitting nearby too. I could dig it as well. It's from this niche house. Oh goodness, let's see. Let me see if I can find it for you. At this point, I might as well just grab the bottle. Why don't you say I do that? I'm having a brain fart too. I've been having a lot of them lately. Work has been a little bit stressful, more than I would like. I got it right here. It's by Chabot. Chabot. It is called E Mythique from Chabot. That to me, this is a fragrance that has more tarragon in it than pretty much any fragrance I've smelled in the heart. Big Tuscanol bomb. Tuscanol is that constituent in tarragon that gives it its distinctive scent. Chabot, Il Mythique. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. More cedars and some affordable cedars as well, at least from what I last checked. This is Lalique pour Homme Equus. Pencil shaving cedar, but there is this beautiful bright sweetness to it too that I really appreciate in Equus as well. that it's just really citrusy in the top. There's a lot of juniper in it. They say that there's a sequoia accord, which I can kind of discern. It's just a really wonderful woody scent. And still pretty affordable. I see that they're still selling it for between $20 and $40. You can't beat that, can you? Lalique Porom Equus, the one with our horse, right there, the inlay. So that's a nice one. Yeah, and then another cheap but cheerful one is Quorum Silver Eau de Toilette. Yeah, this is a flanker of the original classic Quorum. And this, in my humble opinion, is one of the best cedars I've smelled, and you can't beat the price on this one either. Looking at the prices as this is going, I mean, there are some bottles going for $18.35, under $18. Magnificent stuff, sort of a gingery aromatic heart, but besides a little bit of the spices and the citrus and the aromatics, it's a big hunk of Virginia cedar in it. Lovely, lovely stuff. Quorum Silver. And yeah, those are some great examples I have of cedar. Oh, we could do a great segue from cedar to sandalwood by discussing one from Diptyque. Tam Dao. This is the eau de toilette. I'm partial to the eau de toilette. Those who are all about having, strong, long-lasting, all that good stuff, they tend to prefer the eau de parfum. But I find the eau de parfum to be a little too thick, and something is lost of the sort of the higher timbre qualities of the cedar and the sandalwood that you do find in the EDT of Tam Dao. So that is what I would say is almost equal measures of sandalwood and cedarwood. Really great evening fragrance and very relaxing. And then there is this one from Berdoues, Berdoues. It's Arts Erlab, ARZ space EL hyphen RAB. And this is a light, oracey, violet, ethereal cedar. It isn't diaphanous. It doesn't float off your skin, but there's just this ethereal quality to it that I think is beautiful. Wonderful skin scent to it. It's Ars El Rab from Berdoues. It is from the collection Grand Cru. Now let's move on to sandalwood. Before we do, does anybody have any mentions of their favorite cedars that they'd like to add to the conversation? I'd love to hear. And Duncan says, Biblos Uomo has a beautiful tarragon. And then there's a rare one called Seaward. Who makes Seaward? Nick S. says, I picked up a lovely vintage frag, which seemed to use tarragon to create a wonderful dry licorice accord, Manavaran. 20 people tuned in. Whoop. Give me a second here. A lot of things floating around here, so just bear with me. Has anybody bought a coffee yet? If you can only afford one, that's fine. One coffee is $5. I'm going to do a coffee check, see if anybody has purchased any coffees to support the channel. And so far, I have a big old goose egg. So if anybody be willing to buy a coffee or two or three or more, if you do want to buy multiple coffees, once again, I'm going to show this right here. 6 cups equals a sample pack that I will send to you. 12 cups is a 4-bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. So that's 4 bottles from my surplus collection and the sample pack, and I will send that to you with the donation of 12 cups. US only, please. Check out the comment that is pinned at the top for the buymeacoffee.com website. Also, let's check the likes. The likes are what drive the algorithm. It's what gets more people to discover this channel. So I'm going to take a look right now And I'm going to see how many likes that we currently have, because I know that there have been a number of people who are popping by and checking things out. So we're gonna take a look at that. Oh, we have Margie doing her own live stream as well. It's a live stream um, sort of review here. 32 people liking. This is excellent. We have 32 likes. We're up to 33. Let's try to aim to have 40 likes if you don't if you wouldn't mind liking. Yes, the Bordeaux. Ah, yes. I will add that here. Okay. Tom mentions Maya Inji. I can't pronounce that. I'm not sure. Nordic Cedar. Thank you. Very cool. How about anybody else? 19 people tuned in. Cedar fragrances. What are your favorites? We're going to move on to sandalwood here. Oh, before we do, I think there is one more that has a lot of cedarwood in it. A wonderful woody fragrance, and I did a review for this recently. It's Olympic Orchids Woodcut from Olympic Orchids. That is Ellen Covey. I mentioned this one briefly with my effluvium guest last week, Joshua, and he's a fan of Olympic Orchids, and we were chatting a little bit about woodcut. I also have a review of this on Base Notes and Fragrantica. All right, we're going to move on to sandalwood. How about a sandalwood cologne that's not going to break the bank? And it is quite lovely. This is GOF Trumper Sandalwood Cologne. And how much real sandalwood is in this? What kind of sandalwood is in this? I don't know for certain, but it just smells gorgeous. And I think you could still get this for, let's see, I'll do a quick check here. There are some rosy elements too in geranium, and it's spicy, and it has sort of like a musky, ambery dry down. It's very, very lovely stuff. I'm seeing that it sells for under $50 in some places. So that's GOF Trumper Sandalwood Cologne. And there's a lot of these classic barbershop style sandalwood fragrances. You also have Taylor of Old Bond Street, luxury sandalwood cologne. Just that powdery, fresh feeling, smooth, refreshing, with the citrus on the top. It just smells so well groomed. Can anybody mention to me a well-known fragrance from Chanel that features a good quantity of sandalwood? I'd like to see if somebody can guess this correctly. There's not one answer though, so but I want to see if you'll get the answer for the one that I'd like to chat about very briefly next. 14 people tuned in. I think everybody's checking out Margie because she hasn't done a live stream in a while. It's all good. We can't prevent these things from happening. There will be some people doing the watching the playback. Ah, yes. Great choice. Violet Aurora. Bois d'Azil is a great choice. Not the one that I have next to me, but you're not wrong. That does have a lot of sandalwood in it. Oris Eris, another great choice. Gabrielle. But that charming man chose the correct one. Egoist. Sycamore, another great guest there from Absurd Nose. So it is Egoist. Egoist. Has anybody seen that the commercial from 1990 for Egoist? It's a real hoot. So here we have Egoist. This is an older version, circa 1997. And we have Jacques Polge at the helm here. There's a rosewood at the top. Not too dilly, not too silly dilly though. Maybe that coriander is keeping that in check. And this is a cinnamony, sandalwood, rosy, a bit of carnation. And another prominent feature is an ambrette, musk mallow, an ambrette seed in the base. And this is one that I actually haven't done, I haven't sat down and done an official review for it, but I will be doing that soon. But that's another great sandalwood fragrance marketed to the gents, but is absolutely unisex. Egoist. The newer versions are pleasant as well. I'm familiar with them. They There are no complaints with the newer versions as well. I just happen to have an older version. That doesn't mean you must have an older version of it. Somebody mentioned another famous sandalwood forward fragrance from the past 40 years or so. Um, yeah, it is. It is. It's brilliant. Glorious stuff. Trumper is such an underrated house, and they've pretty much giving stuff away at their prices. I know. Like the Ajaccio Violets is a beautiful violet. The Spanish Leather, Euchris, the Wild Fern, just like that. It smells so much like the original Fougère Royale. So, what is another famous sandalwood forward fragrance? It's been mentioned already in the chat. Let's see who can give the answer quickly. Somebody was mentioning it earlier. And this one's a little bit more of a floral sandalwood. That's my hint. Very nice, Oris Eros. It is Samsara. Samsara. I have the eau de parfum here, and the parfum is spectacular as well. But this is the eau de parfum, and this demonstrates what sandalwood does to florals, how how the overlap creates this really a compelling effect. There's a lot of ylang ylang in this. There's a peachiness. There's some greenness, especially in the top notes. Some iris, even some narcissus. Just really opulent smelling stuff. Maybe this is the one I'm going to spray a little bit on tonight. What do you think? Do you think this is the one I should spray? Tell me. Should I do it? Should I spray it right now? I'm not going to do it until people egg me on to do it. So I'm just going to sit here and wait until people tell me that I should do it. Or if there's some sort of naysayer who says I shouldn't. Absolutely. I think that's good enough for me to do that right now. Yes, all over my body. Mm. Yes, I like it. Here we go. Ah. Hmm. Whoa, those top notes. Yeah. There's a lot of bergamot that I pick up. It's a very sparkly bergamot, but that ylang ylang comes right in, and I can sense the top notes of sandalwood. And remember, just because something's a base note doesn't mean you don't smell it until the base. Everything has a discrete development to it within the composition. So you don't have to wait to smell an aspect of a base note until the end necessarily, unless it's sort of an interesting perfume where you happen to do that, or you happen to smell it later on in the development of it. But you smell the top notes of the sandalwood in the way that just the layering of it. Mm, yeah, that's some good stuff. And it's the texture of sandalwood. It's something about it. It's just so creamy and buttery, but also sort of dry. It can be dry and creamy at the same time. It could be woody, but also feel floral because it's hard to, there's no seam in between the flowers and the woods at that point. They all just sort of coalesce. They all merge. You can't tell where one begins and the other one ends. It's the combination of sandalwood and ylang ylang that does it for me so incredible. It's also what makes Bois d'Azil from Chanel quite lovely as well, is that combination of the ylang ylang and the sandalwood. They just dovetail. It's so nice. More sandalwood. I think I have some more sandalwood. Oh, another favorite sandalwood. Sandalo Eau de Toilette from Lorenzo Villoresi. Such a kick-ass sandalwood. Lorenzo Villoresi is one of my favorite perfumers. He does not get his due credit for being such a talented and skillful and just evocative perfumer in his work. I don't know. I feel like Luca Turin did him really dirty by bashing everything of his, which he does have a right to do, as we know. He does have a right to do that because he's a man of opinions. So I don't think he destroyed Lorenzo Villoresi's reputation. But I feel like maybe he kind of sullied it a little bit. But that's okay because he's entitled to it. You know, but I love Lorenzo Villoresi's work, and what he does with Sandalo here is he takes those qualities of the sandalwood and he knows how to shape them and bulk them with other things, because you have patchouli and vetiver and a popanax and a labdanum, you have the resins, you have the, but none of them really overpower. They just, and this is a word I use a lot, you hear it often from me, they exalt, they elevate, and they expand, and they grow in a way that the sandalwood oil itself would not be able to do. It just expands it and lifts that sandalwood. And it's just magnificent stuff. Just real genius from Lorenzo Villoresi. Regis Moncton, is there a modern version of Samsara as good as what you have? No. Oh, you mean a modern version of Samsara? Like a modern formulation, you mean? I don't want to tell you that you need a newer formulation without having smelled them. I'm not going to sit here and say that. What I hear or what I read is hearsay, and some people say it's changed, but I can't tell you that for certain. Just use your own discretion. All I know is I can say is this particular version, which wasn't from a terribly long time ago, as evidenced from the script on it. This is the early 2000s, and this is a knockout. This is the Eau de Parfum. But newer versions, I don't want to lead you in a direction without really knowing for certain. I'm not going to play that game. Too many people play that game, and they've only read that they said that the newer formulations are inferior. I don't know that for certain. I haven't smelled them. I could be wrong. So like I said, just use your own discretion. See if you can sample newer versions maybe, and see if it feels good to you or smells good to you. Maybe somebody in the chat can guide you. Duncan says, I need to try some Trumper. Had my eye on Eucharist, but it would be a blind buy. Hey, at least it would be a blind buy that isn't going to cost you a lot of money, which is that's what's great about GF Trumper. Nick asks, since they do sample sets here in the UK, surely you could get one in the US. Too famous YouTuber. Yeah, great suggestion, Nick. Still reveling in Samsara. Zeno has a nice sandalwood, a rosewood that holds it together. I agree. That's a great honorable mention. Didn't pull it out for discussion here, but it would be not out of place in this discussion at all. So we can move on to some more general woods. I think that was it as far as like sandalwood, but we can talk about other kinds of woods that you could think of things like, the way that patchouli ends up smelling woody when it's mixed with vetiver. Both have a woody aspect to it, and when they come together, they smell woody. We have Moods from Kritzia from 1989. which does give me that kind of like very woody effect from the combination of the vetiver and the patchouli. Then we have things that evoke pine wood, and we have this. I can't say enough good things about this one. It is one of the better ones from Perfumum Roma. It is called Arso, and Arso to me smells like arid conifer forest. Like it feels kind of like smelling like ponderosa pines and the resins and the sap that emanate from the pine trees. It's incensey. It is a bit cedary as well. It's just so well done, and it is a powerhouse if that matters to you. So Arso from Perfumum Roma, juniper wood and juniper berries and all other kinds of cedary stuff with that like incensey isoe super done right. You could get that with something like Aesop Huil, HWYL. This is one of my favorites from Aesop. Aesop doesn't knock me out all the time, but when they do, I'm pretty impressed by um, a couple of them. And this is one that I've long liked, Huil, HWYL from Aesop. Mine is post 2004 and you still love it. So the one, are you referring to the Samsara? Did you confirm that just from the bottle itself? Because I think it's just really spectacular. So yeah, I knew it was like 2000s or something. Do you have any fur scents? The Absolute is so jammy. Oh, yeah. What is my most fur forward fragrance? Because I don't have any here that really are super fur forward, but I know that I have a couple. I mean, Fee and Agui from Serge Lutens definitely has some balsam fir absolute in it, no doubt about it. Um, so that could be one of them. But once again, like fur to me is less woody and it's more about the needles and the resins. If we're being strict about the wood. Let's see, let me look here. So for fur fragrances, well, Fu Dab Sen has a pretty strong fir note along with the absence, along with the wormwood. Holy Mountain by Apotheker Tepe, a very smoky fir accord in that one. Encens Flamboyant from Annick Goutal. Um, yeah, what else? I would love to find one that is very heavy. Oh, Elite from Floris. That's one that actually I'm surprised by the amount of uh, fir balsam absolute is in it. And it could account for the color as well because fir balsam absolute is green. So the dilution of that could cause like a green tint in a perfume. And UK says, who's tried Xenia Peruvium Ambret? Is it good? I can't say that I have. I wish I could be more helpful. Fir, Pinot Silvestre. Yeah, like the fir needles. To me, Pinot Silvestre is very piney as well and very herbal, like thyme and rosemary and basil. Yeah, yeah. Needles. The needles, like if you crush the needles, if the distillation of the needles from the fir tree, very much that's where the fir wood. I haven't really found any raw materials that uses the wood of the fir tree. Well, let's move on to oak. This is Shen from Suge Lutens. This I know, I can tell, I can pick it up in it that they have some of that oak wood absolute that I was chatting about earlier. And it's very smoky and leathery as well. There's that kind of whiskey kind of scent, like aged barrel whiskey, some rum as well. a little bit of immortelle that fixes it all, some beeswax. There's this a bit of this tobacco-y kind of like lit cigarette kind of quality to it that's interesting too. Just a bit, just a smidgen, not offensively so. Excellent, excellent stuff. And then I would love to mention Jean Bibel. Jean Bibel's Bervuvu from January Scent Project. This is very much a woody and foresty type of fragrance. And he uses Texas cedar, white cedar extract, red cedar. He has a mushroom accord in it, and then he uses rose to an excellent effect because I think rose can bring out woody qualities. Um, because if you think about the organic chemistry, the scent chemistry, some of the same components that make rose smell a certain way also to happen to make woods smell a certain way. So you have some activity going on there, and you got castoreum in this, some honey. Very beautiful stuff here. One of my favorites from John Bibel, January Scent Project, Bervuvu. And this is a house that doesn't get nearly as much recognition as I feel that it should. It's from France. It's Miller et Berthaud, and this is study number 23 / newsletter. Now, the perfumers who work for this house, they're cloaked in anonymity. I don't know who is the perfumer or who are the perfumers, but they're pretty consistent on making these nuanced and poetic kind of creations. And this is a very incensey Murford fragrance with a pretty decent slug of cedar and sandalwood. It's aldehydic at the top, which imparts that incense quality because of the way that aldehydes are, that kind of that lift to the incense. And this is a house worth checking out, and it isn't terribly expensive if you know where to look. Miller et Berthaud, study number 23 / newsletter. Really underrated. I'm seeing one of them being sold right now on, I don't know if this is eBay, but it's for $75 if you wanted to dare a blind buy, or see if the website has a sample cough for it, or a sampler set. But yeah, there's some fennel in this as well, which is kind of cool. Kind of I think it kind of goes well with the myrrh. It kind of like brings out some of the, kind of tempers some of the bitterness and brings out some of the interesting facets of the myrrh. And I think that's pretty much all of the ones that I've set aside. I'd love to hear more from you guys and see if there's any sort of mentions that you think are worth sharing for Notes and Accords Woods. Andy T says, go vintage. The quality of sandalwood has really gone down in modern perfumes. It's no longer Mysore, but instead either fast-grown Australian or more synthetic replacement compounds. I'm not going to comment too much about that because I think that I don't have enough evidence to say that it's impossible to create a good sandalwood accord currently. I don't think that it is necessarily impossible to have a good sandalwood accord. In my first hour, I shared an abundance of materials that can be used to reconstruct Mysore wood without actually using a large quantity of it. It's just a matter of whether or not a perfume house has a budget, has a willingness, if the perfumer is skillful or talented enough. So I'm not really of the camp that you can't have a good sandalwood perfume in 2024. Is it as common as it used to be? That's up for debate, but I don't necessarily think that it's entirely impossible at all. Favorite two sandalwoods are Patou Poron and Indiski. Is that correct? Indiski Santal, a 1960s Russian animalic Mysore with goat hair tincture. So this was actually released in the 1960s, or is it a 1960s style? I am fascinated with the prospect that anybody would be using a tincture of goat hair in the 1960s, because I honestly thought that that was a relatively new development in artisan perfumery that started with natural perfumers. But I would love to be enlightened more. Pâte pour Homme definitely has a pretty sizable amount of sandalwood in it. So that would make sense if that would be your favorite sandalwood. Pat Lester, was Santa Majuscule mentioned? It wasn't, but it could be mentioned, and it should be mentioned because that is also lovely. Also from Serge Lutens, Jus de Peau, another lovely use of sandalwood and Jus de Peau as well. So yes, absolutely, it's worth mentioning Santa Majuscule. Ah, yeah, a l'instant galant. Great use of wood in that. I agree. I think that that is worth mentioning as well. We have 20 people who are tuned in. Let's do a check on the likes. 34 likes. Let's try to bring that up to 40. For the 22 people who have tuned in, if you do not see that the little thumbs up sign, it has turned white. It does, you have to click on it, and then you end up liking the stream, and then people end up seeing this. They do a search and they're like, I'm interested in woody fragrances. They do a search. This comes up, and they get to watch the playback, discover the channel, and the more the merrier. More people that we can meet and interact with who share our passion for perfume. So don't forget to hit the like button. And also, I'm going to do a check here. No, oh, we got one coffee. Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you so much for your continued support over the past few years. It means a great deal to me. It was amusing when you said the graphite bottle was losing its because it was sort of drooping downward. It started to shift downward, and all I can think of is somebody with loose drawers dropping. But yeah, I'm glad that you got a kick out of that. Thank you very much, Claire. Tom says Pinewood is a great house to check out for straight up woodsy scents. Current fave is Grist Mill. I do need to still get a sample set from Pinewood. I've heard a lot of great things from that young gentleman and his way around making woody and coniferous scents. So you've reminded me that I still should definitely check him out and his work. And we have Nick S, more casual and not really my style, but I think Kenzo Jungle Porom deserves more love than it gets. Yeah, I think that's worthy of a mention as well. That's a good woody one, a good woody spicy for sure. A little bit of that cardamom as well. Very nice. Thank you, Regis. I really appreciate that. And have you already liked? And if not, please make sure to do so. I'm checking one more time. I'm not going to sign off until I get at least 40 likes. So I think that's a good number to aim for. We'll take a look at that again. And I'm still seeing 34. We're going to aim for 6 more. So anybody who hasn't liked the stream, 38. Ooh, we're up to 38. Two more. I'm going to be on for just a few more minutes. So this is the second to last installment of this series. I've been doing this series since November of last year, starting with the leather series. And the first unofficial one was It's Time to Spill the Tea. So I kind of count that one as a Notes and Accords because it sort of was about tea and perfume. But the next one will be the final one of this series, and it will be incense. That will be in December. So be sure to tune in for that one. 17 people tuned in. Does anybody have any suggestions for topics and ideas for the year 2025? I'd like to hear some of your ideas and thoughts on what I should do for content on this channel in 2025. Yeah, I am appreciating that Samsara Eau de Parfum is my scent of the night, the SOTN. Incense, yes. The finale for this whole series is incense. One of my favorites. Nice. I know, I think we've talked about our shared love for incense. So what have we done so far? For those who may not be aware, I'm going to go to my YouTube channel because I can't remember it off the top of my head. And I'm going to go through all the different notes and accords that we've done so far on this channel, the ones that you can tune in for the playback. And we go all the way back to we had, give me a second here. We had It's Time to Spill the Tea. That was the unofficial first one. And then we had Notes and Accords Leather, Notes and Accords Tobacco, Amber, Animalics, Rose, Violet and Iris, Fougères, Chypres, Aromatics, which includes wood or herbs and spices, and the current one that you are now listening to and are watching, which is woods. And then the final one, which is next month, and that will be incenses. We have Oris Eros with a comment here. I want to know what other fragrances you consider to be masterpieces. You should do a series on that. I think that would be a great suggestion. I could do a video on 10, because 10 works, gets people's attention. I try to go against the grain as much as I can, but 10 seems to just get viewers. 10 masterpieces, 10 of what, in my humble opinion, I consider to be masterpieces. And out of the scores and scores of fragrances that I do have, I don't throw that word around very lightly. I don't think that there are 500 masterpieces of perfumery. I would say that the ones out of the collection that I have, which is over 1,000, yes, I know that is absolute lunacy, 30, probably 30 out of all of them. To me, my own taste. I could do a top 30 countdown. I could do one of those zany videos that some other, other people on YouTube do. Top 30 masterpieces. I could do that, or I could just narrow it down to 10. Famous YouTuber, Coco, Patchouli, Cedar, end of story. Great combination right there. Top 10, top 10, top 10. Gets the viewers, gets the attention, gets the clicks, gets the likes, gets all that good stuff. Because I'm trying to be a big time YouTuber here. I hope to have 50,000 in 1 year. No, not really. Not really. I'm not aiming for that. Here's the thing. It's really the only way that you could really get that, like even like 10,000 subscribers, is if you have the time to do this like every day, or you just pump out content, because volume of content is what drives traffic. I don't have time for that. So there's either that, or you really cater to as wide of an audience as possible to get a lot of people attracted. So I'd have to do like, daily driver fragrances, the top 10 beast mode. I'd have to start doing shit like that. And I will never do that kind of stuff. And I will never be the influencer. I've said that time and again. I'm not going to be an influencer. No way, no how. I don't need to make money off of this. I don't need to have brand partnerships and sponsorships. It's not necessary for me. If you do it, that's fine. No judgment. If you got to make money, you got to make money, but I don't have any interest in that. But because this is kind of like public broadcasting, well, at least the way public broadcasting used to be, that's a whole other story, a whole other can of worms. This is viewer supported. So I'm pretty much like supported by my viewers. That's why you have to buy me a coffee. And that's why you have other means of supporting this channel in whatever way, whether it's monetary or otherwise. So it's viewer supported. YouTube, I mean, this is monetized with advertising, but it's it's spare change. I make about $100 every 6 months, so it's really about viewer support. Regis Moncton, JJ Colborne, my scent of the day is Hermes Bellamy Vetiver. I love it. Have you tried it? I have tried it. I have it, and I love it. It's excellent. I think it's a great twist on the original Bellamy concept, adding that delicious, dense vetiver in it. I swear that Jean-Claude Elena used some like thick vetiver absolute. It's just so chunky. Really good stuff. Duncan, Rocco Barocco Pour Homme EDT. Excellent. Yes. Nick S. Could easily do a long list of musical masterpieces. Seems trickier with fragrance. It is trickier. And it's totally subjective as well. I'm sure that some of the fragrances that I deem to be a masterpiece, a number of them will be what the status quo considers to be a masterpiece. But there are going to be some that will probably surprise people, like, oh, I never really considered that to be a masterpiece. What's up with this dude? But I probably still consider them to be masterpieces. Um, so yeah, we're at 2 hours now. And I want to let you know that we're going to do another one of the Effluvium live streams next week. We're going to be doing December 5th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to have a guest, Chester Gibbs. He is a perfumer. He joined me last season for Effluvium, and he's going to be one of my returning guests for the season of primarily returning guests. So we'll be talking next Thursday, December 5th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So do be sure to check that out. Thank you very much, Duncan. Thank you for being a longtime supporter. You've been there since the very beginning, and it means a great deal to me. Thank you. And I'm going to do one more check-in on the coffees. Remember, one coffee's $5. You don't have to get a sample pack, but you can get a sample pack if you buy 6. And I still have that one from Claire. And I can still, I'll sleep well knowing that at least my dear friend Claire, who's been a longtime supporter, has contributed a coffee. So next month, incenses. So I'll be going through some natural materials. You'll probably be able to predict what those materials are going to be, and then go through some synthetics that are used to give the illusion of incense and fragrance. And then in the second hour, I'm going to be sharing the incense fragrances in my collection and talking about those a little bit. I hope that those of you who tuned in have enjoyed this. It's always a pleasure connecting with all of you and chatting. And I will see you again next time. We'll see you next week for the next Effluvium. Until next time, be well.